Police hunt for a terror network linked to the Manchester suicide bomber. Salman Abedi, who killed 22 people and injured many more, recently travelled to Libya. There have been more raids and more arrests as police search for those responsible.
I think it's very clear that this is a network that we are investigating, and as I've said, it continues at a pace. There's extensive investigations going on.
Troops patrol the streets in Britain as the terror level is raised to critical. I'm live in Manchester with the very latest on this fast-moving investigation. More victims are identified, and it's revealed an off-duty policewoman is among the dead. Tonight, community leaders make a plea for peace in the spirit of Manchester.
From Manchester, this is the ITV Evening News with Mary Nightingale.
Good evening from Manchester, where police say it is now very clear that the suicide bomber who murdered 22 people here did not act alone. As anti-terror police made further arrests and raids across Greater Manchester, they said Salman Abedi was part of a terror cell. It also emerged that Abedi may have slipped through the net, with claims that authorities were warned that he was dangerous. It all came as 1,000 troops were deployed to protect key sites, and the terror threat level was raised to critical. In the first of our reports, security editor Rohit Khatru has the latest on the investigation.
Salman Abedi was known to the authorities here. He was known to the authorities in the US. Now they only wish they knew more. The frantic search to find his network is part of one of the most urgent British counter-terrorism investigations of recent years. Today the search continued for the people who supported him, who helped him. A home raided in central Manchester. Armed specialist officers came prepared to find explosives.
I know it's a flat on the 3rd floor. I don't know if anyone was in there at the time. I have been told by one of my neighbours that it has been rented out as an Airbnb recently.
What has driven the scale and the urgency of this investigation is the fear of more explosives and more people ready to use them.
Have you found the bomb factory?
As I've said, we are carrying out extensive searches of premises across Manchester, but it would be ill-advised of me to comment on the investigation to that level.
Do you believe that somebody else put that bomb together, and are you searching for that person? Is this a search now for a bomb maker?
I think it's very clear that this is a network that we are investigating, and as I've said, it continues at a pace.
After the arrest of Abedi's brother in Libya today, his father said, "We don't believe in killing innocents. This is not us." But tonight he was detained by local security forces in Tripoli too. The suicide bomber left a living legacy. Soldiers on the streets today, hundreds deployed to protect major buildings. A public expression of private uncertainty among investigators as the terror threat level was raised to its highest point. It's unlikely that the planning of Monday night's attack was the work of one man. He might even have been carrying someone else's bomb, and so his network is now the focus for investigators. Salman Abedi was Manchester-born, Manchester-raised, Manchester-educated, but he's thought to have regularly travelled to Libya, where his parents are from. His father returned to fight against the Gaddafi regime in 2011. Today, the French Interior Minister claimed Abedi had proven links to Islamic State and is believed to have travelled to Syria in recent months. He's also linked to Raphael Hosti, a known IS recruiter from Manchester. ITV News understands he told followers he was recruiting 50 Brits a month at one point. And another friend, Anil Khalil Raufi, a second key recruiter, whose wife spoke to ITV News last year.
He asked me to go out there. As you know, when he got there, he kept asking me until he died, and I kept saying no.
Abedi's attack might have altered what security in Britain looks like. Terrorists are not only motivated by slaughter, but by change too.
So Rohit, it's really been a day of major developments, hasn't it, in the search for those behind this attack?
And a day of major developments, in fact, developments in the last few minutes. We're now hearing more information from security sources in Libya who are telling news agencies there that the brother of the Manchester attacker, who, as we reported, was arrested earlier today, had travelled to Libya from the UK 6 weeks ago, and significantly, they say he was planning a terrorist attack in Tripoli, the capital of Libya. There have, of course, been arrests here too today. A fifth man was arrested in Wigan earlier today. He was tackled to the ground. He was arrested by plainclothes officers. He was apparently seen wearing what was described as a suspicious package. But I've been told by several sources today that this investigation is still in the weeds. It hasn't progressed that far yet.
All right, but growing concerns about how and where he was actually radicalised.
And that's one of the strands of this investigation. Of course, you know, his mosque has been speaking today. They say he wasn't radicalised there, but really much of the focus of that bit of the investigation appears now to be looking towards Libya, as well as London and here in Manchester, the two cities that he lived inside the UK.
But very much the search goes on, the investigation continues.
Absolutely, it's continuing, and we're now only on day 2 of this investigation, still in the weeds, as they say.
All right, Rohit, thank you very much indeed. And as Rohit said, tonight the Didsbury Mosque, where Abedi prayed and was alleged to have worked, has very much distanced itself from him. A spokesman gave this statement outside.
The horrific atrocity that occurred in Manchester on Monday night has shocked us all. It has indeed shocked us all. This act of cowardice has no place in our religion or any other religion for that matter.
A minute's silence is to be held right across the country tomorrow at 11 a.m. to remember the innocent lives lost in Monday night's attack. Here, the tributes continue to flood in, along with many, many flowers laid in nearby St Anne's Square, not far from me here. And today we learnt the names and we saw the faces of more of the victims, among them young people who were heading home and parents who'd been waiting to collect their children. Another victim was an off-duty female police officer. Emmy Murphy is outside Manchester Arena now. Emma.
Mary, in the last hour or so, Cheshire Police have confirmed that one of their officers did die here at the arena. We're told she was off duty, had come here for a family evening with her children and her husband, and it's reported that her children and her husband were injured in the blast which killed her. That information came as we learnt more about the people who died here, the lives they'd led, and those who mourn them. These photographs were all taken at special or happy moments. And yet they're now the images which, for those who do not know the dead, will come to personify them around the world. How impossible their eventual use would have seemed in the moments they were taken. Among those confirmed dead today, 29-year-old Martin Hett. He worked in public relations and had built a huge social media following, partly due to his love of Coronation Street. He's been described as wonderful, iconic and beautiful. Angelika and Martin Klee from Poland were also killed in the explosion. They'd taken this selfie just a short distance from the arena and had gone to collect their daughters when they died. Kelly Brewster was said to be enjoying the happiest time of her life. She leaves behind a partner and a little girl. She died shielding her nieces.
She was so excited to be going, and then to just think that was it. That would be the last time I'd see her. It's just not fair.
In Oldham, 2 mothers are being remembered. Alison Howe and Lisa Lees were both killed as they waited for their children.
Every morning when I do school run, Alison's always, with a happy face, she always waves to me. It's just so nice. Now I'll go and miss that face.
Nell Jones was just 14. At her school, they remember her smile and positivity. Her head teacher said friends felt as if they'd lost a sister. Michelle Kiss was at the arena with her daughter. Her death leaves 3 children without a mother, and her family say they will draw on her courage and strength to survive her loss. Jane Tweddle leaves 3 children. Colleagues in Blackpool remember her as a wonderful friend and colleague. Whilst Sorrel Liskowski was one of the youngest to die, just 14 and enjoying a treat night out. Yesterday, Olivia Campbell's family had no idea what had happened to her.
Where is she? Is she alive?
Overnight, it was confirmed the 15-year-old was among the 22 dead.
Our little angel's now gone to heaven, and she's with her granddad Paul. Heartbreaking, but we have an answer now. And yesterday was tormenting that we had no answer.
Every person in this image will be remembered and mourned by hundreds of others. People who, amidst their grief, face the challenge of ensuring those they lost are defined by the richness of their lives, not the brutality of their deaths. Emma Murphy, ITV News, Manchester.
Doctors have been describing how hospitals were stretched to breaking point by the sheer number of critical injuries on Monday night. They said some of those admitted had suffered wounds similar to those normally seen in car crashes. But medics said the way staff pulled together was impressive. Our health editor Rachel Younger reports on the emergency response.
Speaking for the first time today, the doctor who led the team at the hospital treating the most badly injured victims.
Every theatre was full and active. 6 theatres working on trauma patients. This is just for adults.
6 times more theatres than usual.
Yeah, and we were able to do that to support the patients that were coming through that needed it.
You have a job to do. Has it hit you personally yet, what you and your staff have dealt with?
It was a bit of a roller coaster. There were relatives that were here who were looking for their injured people that they knew were here. There were people who had died. There were people who were in theatre and were waiting for an answer about where they were going, and there were people, thankfully, who were relatively well, and we were able to reunite them. It's even for grisly old me, it was a terrible night in many senses.
Some of the ambulances that night brought them desperately sick children without parents or anyone who could tell doctors their names.
One of the first patients that I met was an unnamed patient, and actually knowing somebody by a number, which was where we were to start with, was the most extraordinary experience. And actually, I think not just me, I think a number of my colleagues felt it quite hard to deal with.
As names emerged, injured parents were moved to beds by their children's, nurses using social media to identify one patient.
I'm immensely proud of this organisation. I mean, the one thing, I'm getting a lump in my throat saying it, but when I walked away yesterday evening when I left work, for me, the sense of pride was just quite extraordinary.
On the most difficult of nights, the finest response. Rachel Younger, ITV News, Manchester.
Troops were deployed to Downing Street and other key sites across Britain today as the terror threat was increased to the maximum critical level. And our political correspondent Carl Dinnan is outside Downing Street tonight. So, Carl, tell us, how are these troops being used?
Well, you may be able to see one of the soldiers actually just through the gates of Downing Street behind me. He's one of 984 armed forces personnel who've been deployed to replace police officers on static guard duty like this at sensitive locations. Now, initially that means they've been deployed around Westminster, at Buckingham Palace, at some embassies in London, and of course here at Downing Street, where I have to say at lunchtime it was quite an unnerving sight to see a squad of soldiers walking down the street in combats and fully armed. Now, the idea is to free up armed police officers so that they can take part in operations relating to counter-terror operations relating to Manchester. This is just phase 1 of this operation. If the police want more help, there are another 3,000 troops they can call on. I understand it could go up to 10,000 if really needed, but we're not at that stage yet. Also here at Westminster today, it was announced that the political parties will resume their general election campaigning on Friday.
All right, Carl Dinnan near Downing Street, thank you. So, still to come on the ITV Evening News, the innocent children caught up in Monday's attack. And Manchester United, the football fans on a city united. And those stories and more after the break. Join me then. Again, welcome back to Manchester. Now, people of all ages are trying to make some kind of sense of the terrible events here on Monday night. For children, it's almost impossible to comprehend what happened and why. But as Penny Marshall reports, parents and teachers have been trying to explain the horror to young minds.
Right, so we're a day on, aren't we? How do we feel today?
With most adults unable to understand the terror that came to this city, Manchester's children were today being helped to deal with their own trauma.
What do you now think about our city?
I think we were all united.
Terror came close, very close, to everyone here.
I feel like it's really sad.
And in specialist assemblies and class discussions across the city, pupils were being encouraged to talk about it.
I feel less nervous of going back into Manchester.
They have to continue to lead their lives. The alternative is they never set foot outside the house.
One man who understands how to rebuild confidence after tragedy is Colin Parry. His son Tim was killed in an IRA bomb in 1993, aged 12. He now runs a centre offering support for the survivors of terror attacks.
How do you reassure children that the world is still safe in the light of these awful events?
One way is to tell them that there is a far greater likelihood a plane will fall out of the sky or some other disaster will happen than a terrorist incident will touch you personally, despite how close the Manchester bomb was to a large city and the northwest region.
Children may have questions even adults find difficult to answer, but the focus is now on making them feel safe again in this city. Penny Marshall, ITV News, Manchester.
There'll be at least some welcome respite from the grim events here later tonight when Manchester United face Ajax in the Europa League final. The players are determined to play on and win it for the city, but their thoughts will not be far from those caught up in the attack here. Our sports editor Steve Scott reports from Stockholm on how football is united for Manchester.
Sombre may be overstating it, but there's certainly an air of contemplation mixed with solidarity among United fans. One group bringing a giant banner reflecting the mood here. They hope it will find a prominent home inside the stadium this evening.
Hopefully come tonight there will be a little bit of touch of sadness, and people affected by that tragedy, Manchester United fans, they might take a little bit of solace in the fact that the club have won the trophy, and it'll obviously be dedicated to those who've lost their lives and who were injured in the attack as well.
Stockholm itself is no stranger to terror, and today some paused by the makeshift memorial marking those who were killed in last month's attack in the town centre. United legend Paddy Craren's granddaughter escaped unharmed from Monday's concert, but he experienced that gut-wrenching fear before finding out she was safe.
I'm one of the fortunate ones. What about the unfortunate ones? There was a young kid at 14 died today. Can you imagine? The Manchester United fans are going to be there tonight and they're supposed to sing with joy and all that sort of thing. It's surreal.
As the afternoon wore on, thanks to a combination of sunshine and beer, the atmosphere began to resemble what you'd normally expect before a big European final. But of course, nothing about tonight is normal, and no one among the thousands here from Manchester is pretending otherwise. Tonight's opening ceremony has been scaled back. The players will wear black armbands, and the minute silent before the game is bound to prove a moving start to the evening. But for many, the most important part of tonight's game is not the result, but that it serves as a fitting tribute to those who lost their lives this week.
Steve Scott, thank you. Well, back here in another news, briefly, a lorry driver has been arrested on suspicion of causing death by dangerous driving after 5 people were killed in a crash on the M6. 4 women and a man who were travelling in the same car died in the crash near Stoke-on-Trent. Another man is in hospital with serious injuries. And President Donald Trump has met the Pope at the Vatican. Despite having clashed in the past over issues of immigration, the pair discussed how to work towards worldwide peace. Now, Manchester's mayor has encouraged people here today to get back to normal, to resume their lives as far as possible. Andy Burnham said the city may be going through the most difficult of times, but it's important, he said, to send out the message that it will not be beaten. Damon Green on the people standing together against terror.
This is a place that has been through some hard times, oppressions, recessions, depressions and dark times. But we keep fighting back with Greater Manchester spirit, northern grit, northern wit in Greater Manchester's lyrics.
The words of poet Tony Walsh, a poem for Manchester, words which have come to have new meaning. The poet moved and humbled that his work has been adopted in this time of heartbreak.
We're a resilient place, we're a hardy place, and we've proved that time and time again. This is a devastating blow, particularly for some people, but it's in us as Mancunians, as humans, to fight back in every sense.
Manchester struggled to find words to express its grief and is trying to find ways to say what it feels about loss and about togetherness. The language of flowers being laid at monuments and memorials around the city centre in numbers that are leaving even the florists overwhelmed.
I think the people are very supportive with what happened. I think mainly because it's about very young people who are gone. So it's been a bit punch in the stomach.
Finding words to say things they never felt before and never needed to say. Alan is inviting people to sit on these steps for a cup of tea and a conversation about whatever they like, and there are people who are responding.
From the friends that I have, the friends I know, whether they're Muslim or not Muslim, we're holding it together, and I think we'll continue to do that.
All races and religions live in this city together, and the evidence is people are reaching out to one another.
It's only love that will unite us. It's hatred that will cause our divisions and cause our loss. We are Manchester.
Perhaps it's no wonder that a poem of love has become a city's anthem.
We should give something back. Always remember, never forget. Forever Manchester. Choose love.
Damon Green, ITV News in Manchester.
And that is all for now. Tom Bradby is back later with news at 10, but from me and all the team here in Manchester, goodbye.